Alien girl panics when he says her real name. How did you know? Dust tasted like copper and regret. Jack spat, the gritty red particles sticking to his tongue. His wrecked shuttle was a smoking crater behind him, a monument to shitty navigation and maybe shittier luck, which was saying something, given his career path. Smart-ass scavenger, they called him, usually before they shot at him. This time, something else found him first. The ground vibrated before he saw her. Not seismic, more like seismic, more like angry humming. Then she strode out of the shimmering heat haze rising off the mineral crust, cutting through the air like a blade forged in a sun. Tall. Christ, she was tall and built. Her form wasn't exactly human. Curves where a human shouldn't have them. Hard planes where they should. Skin the color of obsidian kissed by deep violet light, covered in intricate geometric patterns that pulsed with faint internal luminescence. Living tattoos, maybe. Her eyes were pools of liquid gold, fixed on him. No pupils, just that molten stare. And there was a sound coming from her throat, a low, resonant hum that mirrored the ground vibration. She wore minimal armor, more like ritual plates that left a lot bare. Shoulders, lean torso, long, powerful legs. A weapon rested easily in her hand, something that looked like a sharpened segment of volcanic glass fused with metal. He didn't try to run. Nowhere to go. She stopped a few meters away, the humming intensifying. He felt it in his chest, a weird resonance that made his teeth ache. Human. The sound wasn't quite speech, more like thoughts pushed into his skull, amplified and given rough edges. Her mouth didn't move. You defile the flow. Jax raised his hand slowly, empty. Look, lady, no offense, but I didn't exactly choose to land my busted tin can here. Lost power, had a date with an asteroid belt, missed it, ended up here. Happy accidents, right? He managed a lopsided grin. The gold eyes narrowed. The humming deepened, a low growl layered within it. Your presence is a trespass, a contamination. Her grip tightened on the glass metal weapon. The flow claims all who fall upon it. Yeah, well, the flow can file a complaint with my estate, which if I die here is probably just a pile of scrap metal and bad debts. Sarcasm. His only defense. His only offense, really. She took a step closer. The heat felt different now, radiating from her as much as the ground. It wasn't just thermal, it was. Sabidarai Yushan and Hurley Bondatawal. Pressure. Authority. You vibrate wrongly, she said, the mental voice sharper, more insistent. Like gravel in the throat of the mountain. Gravel. Nice. Look, I vibrate wrongly everywhere I go. Comes with the territory. Name's Jax. What's yours? Or do you just go by tall, dark, and terrifying? He held her gaze, forcing a smirk. This was it, the moment she'd vaporize him. The buzzing in his head intensified, growing almost painful. She didn't vaporize him, instead she shifted the weapon, pointed it at his feet. A low-intensity energy pulse shot out, cracking the ground. Silence your ill-tuned vibrations, human Jax. The humming intensified, becoming a roar in his mind. It slammed into his consciousness. Not just sound, but a concept, a command. Submit. His knees buckled. Not from her power, not entirely, just sheer fatigue, the shock of the crash, and the unsettling alien presence. She didn't look surprised. She looked, appraising, like a predator sizing up injured prey. You are weak, she stated. But your energy signature?
It is a discordance I have not encountered. It is.
Boom, why? Curious. Curiosity. Maybe his second best defense after sarcasm. She lowered the weapon slightly. You will come with me. The elders will assess your contaminant state. Elders? Great. Are they gonna make me take a bath? 'Cause I could really use one. She ignored the question. Reached out a hand. Not to help him up, to grasp his wrist. Her fingers were long, slender, tipped with short, sharp claws that didn't pierce his skin but pressed against it. The touch was electric, not painful, but jarring. And the humming amplified tenfold, now centered on the point of contact, surging into him. It felt like his very cells were being scanned, analyzed. He felt exposed, naked under that strange, invasive resonance. Her eyes, those gold pools, seemed to drink him in. Your warmth? It is contained. Unlike the reckless diffusion of the flow, she tilted her head slightly. You are. dressed in fade-high Louboutin, singular, for gravel. He decided to take that as a compliment. Maybe. So tall, dark, and terrifying, where exactly are we going? He asked mentally, seeing as his mouth was still full of grit, and his brain felt like it was vibrating loose. The humming pulsed back. To the heart of the mountain, where the flow is judged. Where you will be judged. She tugged on his wrist, pulling him up. He stumbled, trying to get his feet under him. Joy, he muttered, coughing dust. Just what I needed, an alien jury. Do I get a lawyer? 'Cause mine's probably dead in the crash. She didn't respond, just maintained her grip, leading him away from the wreckage, deeper into the shimmering heat, towards the source of the pervasive resonant hum. Towards the mountain, towards judgment. The air crackled. Every step felt like walking on eggshells, except the eggshells were superheated rock and the egg was his life. He risked a glance at her. She walked with effortless grace, her bare feet seemingly impervious to the scorching ground. The light patterns on her skin intensified, rippling and flowing, mirroring the slow, heavy movement of lava flows in the distance. The humming was a constant presence, a low thrum in his bones now, somehow tied to her proximity. It wasn't just scanning anymore. It felt, possessive, like a brand searing his nerves from the inside. So tall, dark, and terrifying, he tried again, needing to break the oppressive silence. You got a name? Or is that against the rules? Her steps didn't falter. Names are designations for the flow. I am of the flow. My designation is not for outsiders. Outsiders. Right, that made him feel special. Okay, fine. Flow person. Works for me. Just trying to be polite. Haven't had good company in a while. Unless you count the space rats nesting in my ventilation system. No response. Just a humming. He felt her grip on his wrist, firm, almost painful. She wasn't dragging him, but she certainly wasn't letting him go. It felt less like being escorted and more like being claimed. Like he was a specimen, or maybe something even less significant, a pebble she'd picked up. He risked another question. This judgment thing. Thin judgment thing.
What does it involve? Is there like paperwork?
Or is it more of a throw me into a lava pit kind of deal? She stopped, turned her head, those gold eyes meeting his. The humming changed pitch, a short, sharp note that felt like a slap across his consciousness. The flow does not require explanation for its processes, human jacks. It requires acceptance. Or extinction. Oh, extinction. Definitely leaning towards the lava pit now. Right. Acceptance. Gotcha. So, if I accept real hard, I don't get extincted? He tried to keep the sarcasm light, but his heart was doing a frantic drum solo against his ribs. She tilted her head again, a gesture that seemed less alien this time, more like human curiosity, albeit filtered through something ancient and dangerous. Your vocalizations, not which mockle, som gut, one virtue one to bertuperchi sab to fergo. They are layered with falsehoods and deflection. Why do you hide behind trivial sounds? He snorted. Hide? This is just how I talk. It's called personality. You should try it sometime. Beats humming, I bet. The corner of her mouth twitched. A flicker of something unreadable crossed her face before the stern golden gaze returned. Personality is a distortion of the flow. A deviation. Well then consider me one hell of a deviation. He pulled slightly against her grip, just to see what she'd do. Her fingers tightened instantly, the small claws pressing harder into his skin. He felt a sharp spike of invasive energy accompany the pressure, like she was warning him. Don't test me. Message received. So, he continued, picking his battles. This flow. It's like, your God? Your boss? Your particularly demanding significant other? She didn't answer verbally or telepathically this time. The humming grew deeper, resonating down his arm, into his chest, making his very bones hum in response. It felt like he was being saturated with her, with the essence of the flow. It wasn't just possessive anymore, it was starting to feel intimate, unsettlingly so. Like she was trying to imprint herself onto him. The thought sent a shiver down his spine that had nothing to do with the heat. Whoa, hey, he said, trying to shake his arm. Easy there. Personal space? She didn't release him. The golden eyes were locked on his. The flow is existence. It is all that is. And all that will be. To be of the flow is to be bound. To be flow claimed is to be absorbed. Absorbed, right. Still sounded like a bad deal. Absorption sounds. Messy. And permanent. Anything less permanent on the menu? They reached a large fissure in the rock face, dark and deep. Unlike the smooth, bright mineral crust they'd been crossing, the humming intensified, emanating from the depths of the fissure. This was the mountain's throat, the heart of the flow. "You will find out," she said, her mental voice echoing in the confined space of the fissure. She stepped into the darkness, pulling him with her. He had no choice but to follow, the alien's grip on his wrist his only anchor in the oppressive heat and overwhelming hum. The fissure descent was steep, the air growing thicker, heavy with mineral tang and something else, something organic and strangely sweet. Glowing crystalline formations lined the walls, casting flickering light that made her shifting tattoos seem to writhe. The humming was deafening now, a physical force against his eardrums, vibrating through the rock and into his very core. He felt dizzy, disoriented. He risked a glance at her again. The golden light in her eyes seemed to intensify in the darkness, giving her face a stark, almost skeletal cast. She looked utterly alien, a creature of this deep, resonant place. "Are we there yet?" he asked, the mental words barely audible over the hum. No response. She just kept moving, pulling him down, down, down. The temperature was climbing, but it wasn't just heat. It was pressure, like something heavy was pressing down on his chest, making it hard to breathe. Was this the judgment? Being squeezed until he popped. The passage opened into a vast cavern. Unlike the narrow fissure, this space was enormous, its ceiling lost in the gloom high above, and it was filled with sound. Thousands of hums, overlapping, weaving together into a complex, pulsating symphony of resonance. And creatures, beings like her but varied, some larger, some smaller, all with the same obsidian violet skin, glowing tattoos, and gold eyes. They were gathered in clusters, their collective hum contributing to the cavern's roar. And they were all looking at him, at them, at her, holding his wrist, pulling him into the center of their space. These were the elders. They didn't look like patriarchal elders he'd imagined. They looked like variations of her species, perhaps older, their tattoos more complex, their humming deeper, richer. They were arranged in a rough circle around a central pool of slow-moving, glowing lava. This was the heart of the flow. She led him to the edge of the lava pool. The heat was intense here, searing his skin. He could feel the raw energy emanating from the molten rock, vibrating with the same frequency as the humming in the cavern. She released his wrist. The immediate absence of her touch was jarring, but the humming didn't stop. It was everywhere. He stood awkwardly, hands slightly raised, trying to look non-threatening. "All right, flow people," he said, trying to project confidence despite the overwhelming sensory input. "I assume this is the part where I plead my case?" A large Cathar, whose tattoos seemed to pulse with a fiercer light than the others, stepped forward. Its mental voice was a deep, gravelly rumble. "You are a dissonance, human Jax, a disruption in the harmonic balance." The voice wasn't just sound, it was accusation, condemnation. "You fell from the veil without permission. You breathe air not meant for your kind. You contaminate the sacred rock." "Contaminate? Look, I showered last week, and I wasn't exactly invited." My ride exploded. He felt her eyes on him, watching his performance. Was this what she expected? Defiance? Submission? He didn't know. He chose defiance. It was all he had. The gravelly voice continued, ignoring his interjection. "She," indicating the female Cathar who had captured him, claims your dissonance is Hod his Hunnoji. Interesting. Claims you for the trial. Trial. Great. Still no paperwork." The female Cathar stepped forward again, standing beside him, shoulder to shoulder. She was still taller, still felt like pure, focused energy next to his messy, chaotic human form. "He is a fractured energy," she projected, her voice cutting through the communal hum. "But his vibration is unique. It does not seek to blend. It resists. It endures." She looked at the elders, then back at him, a strange intensity in her golden eyes. "I claim him for the right of binding." The right of binding. That sounded significant, and possibly less throw him into lava, and more. Jumped out something else. "Something involving her," the gravelly elder responded. "The right of binding is for those of the flow. To bind with a dissonance. It is forbidden by the ancient harmonies. Holden when it entered by the Altark. He is a dissonance, I would understand, she countered, her mental voice firm, commanding. His resistance. Joa challenges the flow. It is a trial unto itself. The elders hummed amongst themselves, a chorus of low, resonant thoughts. They seemed to be debating, weighing her claim against their ancient rules. The large elder finally projected, very well, Canthar verse. The rite of binding. Use your rite of binding. With a dissonance, it is a path untested. The trial begins now. Prove his worth, or the flow will absorb you both. Canthar verse. That was her designation. Sounded formidable. But the trial, the rite of binding, with him, and the elder's threat, absorb both of them? What the hell had he gotten himself into? She turned to him, her golden eyes blazing with a new intensity. Human Jax, she projected, her voice softer this time, yet more potent. You are claimed. The trial is upon us. Do not break. Break, right, like a twig. He just hoped his particular brand of defiance wasn't about to get him snapped in half. Canthar Vrace stood before him, not as captor anymore, but as claimant. Partner? The elders watched from the edges of the cavern, their collective hum a low, expectant drone. The air crackled with energy, anticipation. The rite of binding requires resonance. Resonance projected, her voice steady. A merging of vibrations. For two of the flow, it is a simple attunement. For us, Alkirk. She trailed off, glancing at his decidedly non-humming, non-glowing form. It requires effort. Effort, he echoed, trying to keep his voice light. Like heavy lifting effort? Or emotional effort? 'Cause I'm better at the former. Emotionally, I'm mostly sarcasm and crippling debt. She didn't smile. Her gaze remained intense, focused. It requires the release of core frequencies, a vulnerability of the energetic self. To harmonize, we must first. Dear expose. Expose, right, sounds like fun. Expose what, exactly? My questionable life choices? My crippling fear of commitment? Your core vibration, she stated simply. The essence of your being, stripped bare. Naked, basically. Energetically naked. Standing in front of her, surrounded by humming aliens and a pool of lava. Awesome. And how do we strip bare our core vibrations, he asked, trying to sound casual. Is there like a machine? Or do we just sheen? I think really hard? She stepped closer. Close enough he could feel the residual heat radiating from her skin, see the intricate patterns of her tattoos shifting and flowing like liquid light. The humming from her throat intensified, a low, resonant purr that sent a shiver down his spine. We connect, she said, her hand lifting slowly. Directly. She reached for his chest, her long fingers spreading over his sternum. The contact was electric, overwhelming. The humming flared into a roar, not just in his ears but inside his chest, synchronizing with his heartbeat. He gasped, a sharp, involuntary sound. It felt like she was reaching into his very core, past bone and muscle and blood, touching something fundamental. He saw her eyes, wide and gold, staring into his and felt a reciprocal surge from her, a wave of pure, raw energy washing over him. It wasn't painful, not exactly, but it was terrifyingly invasive. He could feel everything. Her strength, her focus, her ancient heritage vibrating through her touch. And something else, a deep underlying loneliness. An unexpected vulnerability hidden beneath the dominant warrior facade. What are you doing? He managed, his voice tight. Resonating, she projected, her mental voice layered with a strange, unfamiliar emotion. Seeking your core frequency. It is chaotic. Unlike anything I have known. Chaotic. Yeah, that was him. Tell me something I don't know. She leaned closer, her forehead almost touching his. The humming intensified further, filling his head, his chest, his entire being. He felt dizzy, lightheaded. Images flashed through his mind, snippets of his own life, raw and unfiltered, the wreckage of his first ship, the face of someone he'd failed, the cold emptiness of space. And alongside them, images that weren't his, vast landscapes of flowing lava, towering crystalline structures, flashes of alien faces, battle, isolation. Her memories, or was it just the chaos of their clashing energies? Your past. It is fractured, she projected, her mental voice laced with surprise. Loss. Regret you carry.
Heavy stones.
He winced. Yeah, well, gravity's a bitch, especially in space. She ignored the sarcasm. Yet your core persists, like a knot that refuses to unravel. Her hand moved lower, her fingers tracing the line of his ribs, lingering over his heart. The touch was lighter now, investigative. The humming softened slightly, becoming less invasive, more exploratory. This is your source? She asked mentally. This frantic rhythm? Yeah, that's my heart, he managed, breathing heavily. It's kind of important for, living. She paused, her golden eyes searching his. To live is to resist the flow's return. Your heart, Chan Shinin. Und I grach plink sakwananur j. Nev moiled in the becoins to plothster step. It is a constant defiance. Pretty much my whole life, he admitted, the sarcasm fading, replaced by a surprising honesty. Being energetically naked did that to you, apparently. He felt exposed, vulnerable, but also seen, in a way he hadn't been before. Not by anyone. And yours? He asked, surprising himself. What's your core frequency? Her hum deepened again. The images flickered faster now. Power, responsibility, duty, the weight of expectation, and that thread of loneliness woven through it all. Mine is the mountain's echo, she projected, resonant, unchanging, expected, unchanging, expected. There was sadness in that. He felt it, sharp and sudden, through their bizarre connection. Doesn't sound like much fun, he said quietly. She withdrew her hand slowly. The intense connection snapped, leaving him feeling cold and empty despite the heat of the cavern. The humming subsided to the background drone of the elders. She looked at him, her expression unreadable. The vulnerability was gone, replaced by the familiar shield of the dominant warrior. Fun is a deviation, she stated flatly. The rite requires integration, not entertainment. Right. Integration, whatever fresh hell that meant. The elder's hum rose in volume, a chorus of impatient energy. First turned towards the lava pool, then back to him. The next phase, she projected, her voice regaining its commanding edge, requires physical synchronization. To harmonize the external as the internal is aligned. Physical synchronization, in front of the elders, by a lava pit. He had a sinking feeling he knew exactly what that meant. Physical synchronization, it turned out, was exactly what he'd feared. The elder's hum vibrated with a palpable energy, pressing down on them. Kathar Vura stood tall, her golden eyes fixed on his. The air between them shimmered, thick with tension. The core frequencies are identified, she projected, her mental voice resonating directly in his skull. Now, the forms must align. The external must mirror the internal resonance. Mirror. His internal resonance was apparently chaotic in a knot. How the hell were they supposed to mirror that physically? Before he could articulate the question, she moved. Fast. She reached for him, gripping his arm, pulling him closer. There was no gentleness, only intent. It felt less like a prelude to intimacy and more like prelude to intimacy and more like preparing him for ritual sacrifice. Hey, wait! What are we doing here? He started, but the words caught in his throat as she closed the distance, her body pressing against his. Her skin was hot, impossibly hot, radiating a dry, intense heat that sank deep into his bones. The humming from her throat wasn't just a sound now, it was a physical vibration against his chest, against his jaw as she tilted his head back, her golden eyes burning into his. Harmonizing the vessel, she projected, her voice a low growl in his mind, laced with something raw and powerful. Her hand slid up his arm, across his shoulder, fingers digging into the muscle at his neck. Her grip was firm, possessive. It was a claim, physically asserted. She lowered her head, and he thought she was going to kiss him, but instead she pressed her forehead against his again. The humming intensified, a deafening roar in his skull. Their core frequencies exposed moments ago seemed to be slamming together, trying to find a rhythm, a shared beat. It was overwhelming, disorienting. He felt his knees weaken again, not from fear this time, but from the sheer sensory overload, the invasive energy of her. He gripped her arms, steadying himself, his hands finding the hard, warm planes of her upper arms. Her skin felt smooth, alien, alive with that internal light. Verus, I can't, Dowins, he tried to say, but she cut him off. Her hand on his neck tightened, tilting his head further, exposing his throat. It wasn't a threat, not exactly, but it was absolute dominance. Yield, human Jax, she projected, her voice fierce, commanding. Release your resistance. Let the chaotic knot unravel. Accept the resonance. Release his resistance? His resistance was his entire identity. It's what kept him alive in a universe that wanted to kill him. I don't know how to do that, he projected back, his own mental voice weak against hers. It's who I am. Her grip didn't lessen. Then the right will force the alignment. And suddenly, the humming shifted. It wasn't just invading him anymore. It was swirling around them, a vortex of resonant energy. The light from her tattoos flared, casting strange, dancing shadows on the cavern walls. He felt his body respond involuntarily. A heat surged through him, different from the ambient heat of the cavern or the heat radiating from her skin. This was internal, primal, like his body was being prepared for something inevitable. Her golden eyes, inches from his, seemed to bore into his soul. The raw need in them was unmistakable, startling. The dominant warrior facade was cracking, revealing something ancient and urgent beneath, the right. The binding. This wasn't just a trial by the elders. It was a fundamental need for her species, for the flow, to claim, to resonate, to bind. Her hands moved from his neck, trailing down his chest, pushing against the fabric of his worn flight suit. The cloth seemed to melt away under her touch, leaving his skin exposed to the scorching heat of her. He gasped, a harsh, ragged sound. She pressed her body fully against his, chest to chest, hip to hip. The humming intensified further, a resonant thrum that felt like his bones were vibrating apart and back together. Now, she projected, her voice ragged with effort or need, he couldn't tell which. The final alignment. Embrace the flow, human Jax. Surrender to the current. Surrender. He'd never surrendered to anything in his life, but the energy swirling around them, emanating from her, from the cavern, from the very lava pool, was overwhelming. It wasn't just physical pressure, it was a force of nature, an ancient imperative. His body was responding on a level his conscious mind couldn't control. The heat within him was rising, a desperate primal heat that mirrored the heat of the cavern. It was a survival response, perhaps, or maybe something the right was triggering. His hands, still on her arms, tightened reflexively. He pulled her closer, a guttural sound escaping his lips. She tilted her head back, exposing the humming nodes in her throat, which were now pulsing with intense light. Her golden eyes were half-lidded, fixed on his. This wasn't just a ritual. This was not unnecessary. For her, maybe terrifyingly for him too. The air thickened, not just with heat, but with something potent and primal. Katarvurus pressed closer, her body a furnace against his. The humming nodes in her throat pulsed, and he felt a rush of energy like a jolt of pure power surging into him. His vision swam. The cavern, the watching elders, the lava pool, they all blurred into a swirling vortex of heat and light and sound. All that remained was her golden eyes locked on his, the burning intensity of her touch, the relentless, invasive resonance. The knot. Ishad, it loosens, she projected, her mental voice breathy, filled with a strange wonder. Your resistance. It yields to the current. Yielding felt terrifying, like losing a piece of himself. But the heat, the pressure, the overwhelming need radiating from her. It was breaking down his defenses faster than any weapon ever could. His hands moved, almost on their own, sliding up her arms, over her shoulders, burying themselves in the thick, dark hair that framed her face. Her skin felt impossibly smooth, impossibly hot. The scent of her, mineral tang and that strange sweetness filled his senses. Intoxicating. She leaned into him, her head tilting back further, exposing her throat fully. The humming nodes there were a blinding pulse of light, synchronized now with the frantic pounding of his heart. He felt her mental presence engulf him completely, a vast, complex consciousness focused entirely on him, on this moment. It wasn't just her thoughts anymore, it was her essence, merging with his. Images flashed again, faster, clearer this time. Her perspective, her life, the weight of expectation, the crushing loneliness of her position, the rigid, unforgiving rules of her people, the deep-seated need for resonance, for connection, denied until now. And the shock of his dissonance, his stubborn individuality, a beacon in the predictable flow. Her hand, which had been tracing his chest, moved lower, finding the waistband of his trousers. The touch was electric, sending a shockwave through him. His breath hitched. The sexual nature of this rite was undeniable now, raw and unavoidable. This wasn't just symbolic. This was physical, primal, necessary. "Eris," he gasped, the name a rough whisper against her skin. It was the only thing that felt real in the swirling chaos. Her humming intensified further at the sound of her designation on his lips. "Human Jax," she responded, her mental voice a low purr of power. "Surrender." He didn't know if he surrendered consciously, or if his body simply gave out. The heat, the energy, the sheer alien intensity of her. It was too much. He felt himself falling, and she went with him, her body still pressed tightly against his. They sank to the ground near the edge of the lava pool, the heat scorching, the elders hum a distant roar. She shifted above him, her body a dark, luminous silhouette against the fiery glow of the lava. Her golden eyes, molten gold in the firelight, were fixed on him, filled with an ancient hunger. Her hands were on him, shedding the rest of his clothes with swift, purposeful movements. His body was screaming, overwhelmed, but also ready, desperate. The alien heat within him was raging now, a direct response to hers. It was survival, yes, but it was also something far more fundamental. Need. She settled herself above him, straddling his hips. The contact was searing. He could feel every plane, every curve of her alien form molded against his. The humming was a deep, resonant vibration that seemed to bypass his ears entirely, settling deep within his core. "We merge," she projected, her voice thick with need, no longer mental but a low, guttural sound that vibrated through her throat nodes. "We become one frequency, for the flow." She guided him, her movements deliberate, powerful. There was no hesitation, only the ancient imperative of the rite. He cried out as she plunged into him, a sharp, breathless sound of pain and pleasure and utter shock. She was tight, impossibly hot, her alien form a perfect burning sheath around his. The resonance within him exploded. The knot, the chaotic knot of his being seemed to unravel violently, its energy slamming against hers. He felt overwhelmed, consumed. Her body tightened around his, a powerful grip that threatened to pull him apart. The humming nodes flared, pulsing against his skin. He felt a surge of energy, hers, flooding into him, hot and liquid. It wasn't just physical penetration, it was an invasion of his very being, an attempted assimilation. He bucked against her, a desperate primal reaction to the overwhelming force. She met his resistance with her own power grinding against him, demanding his surrender. "Yield," she commanded again, her voice a guttural roar. Yield to the binding, but the chaotic knot of his core, even as it unraveled, refused to break entirely. It fought back, surging against her power, mingling with her resonant flow in a violent, desperate clash of energies. He grabbed her hips, pulling her harder against him, driving into her with a raw, primal force that seemed to surprise even her. His body, his chaotic human body, was fighting the assimilation, turning the rite into a battleground. Her golden eyes widened, a flicker of shock, then something else, something wild and primal, entering them. The battle of energies became a battle of bodies, a furious, desperate dance on the edge of the lava pit. The clash of energies intensified, their bodies locked together in a raw, primal struggle. It wasn't gentle. It was the desperate, violent dance of two clashing frequencies trying to find a single rhythm. Her grip on him was possessive, demanding. His was a desperate hold against being swept away. The humming from her throat nodes was a low, constant thrum against his skin, vibrating deep inside him. Her golden eyes were wide, fixed on his, a storm of power and need raging within them. He felt her mental presence, no longer just a distinct consciousness, but a vast, swirling ocean of energy trying to absorb his smaller, chaotic eddy. But his knot, his stubborn core of resistance, refused to be fully absorbed. It fought back, mingling with her flow, creating a turbulent, electric current between them. Every thrust, every movement was a battle. A battle for dominance, for control, for the very essence of their beings. She moved with the power of the mountain, relentless and ancient. He met her with the chaotic fury of a supernova, unpredictable and defiant. "Surrender, human Jax," she commanded, her mental voice a roar in his head. "Let the flow claim you." "Never!" He projected back, his own mental voice fueled by desperation, and a stubborn refusal to break. You want to bind? Then you bind with this. He arched his back, driving into her with a force that made her gasp. The reaction wasn't expected. A flicker of surprise crossed her face, quickly replaced by a fierce, almost predatory pleasure. The fight shifted. It wasn't just her trying to claim him, it was them, locked in a struggle where dominance was constantly challenged, constantly reversed. The heat between them reached a fever pitch, fueled by their clashing energies, by the right, by something far more fundamental: need. Pure, unadulterated need. Her body tightened around his, her muscles coiling like a predatory cat. She leaned down, her forehead touching his again, and the humming intensified to an unbearable degree. He felt a tearing sensation deep within his consciousness, like a veil being ripped apart. And then, a flood. Not just her energy, but something else. A connection. A bond, forged in the furnace of their struggle. He saw, felt, experienced fragments of her past, her burdens, her hidden fears. The weight of her designation, Cathar Vares, the mountain's echo, destined to uphold the rigid harmony of the flow, yearning for something unpredictable, something chaotic. And he felt her surprise, her shock, that he, this insignificant, messy human, could challenge her, could meet her power with his own wild energy, could fight the flow itself and not break. He felt a surge of triumphant energy from her, raw and powerful, mixed with a confusing current of something akin to awe. And in that moment of absolute connection, of intertwined minds and bodies, a truth resonated. Something deep within her, buried beneath layers of ritual and expectation, something personal, not her designation, her true self, her pawn name. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. Not through the invasive hum, but through the sudden raw intimacy of their combined consciousness. He knew it. He knew her. His body convulsed, not just from the physical act, but from the sheer shock of the revelation. The clash of energies reached its peak, exploding outwards in a silent, powerful wave that made the ground tremble and the elder's collective hum stutter. Her body stiffened above him, a sharp, indrawn breath escaping her lips. The humming nodes pulsed one final blinding time. And then, release. Physical release. The shattering tension giving way to a rush of heat and sensation, and something else. A subtle shift in the energy between them. They lay together on the hot rock, breathing heavily. The roar of the cavern, the hum of the elders, slowly returned to his awareness. Verses shifted, rolling off him, but didn't move far. She lay on her side, facing away from him, one arm thrown over her eyes. Her skin still glowed, but the vibrant pulse was gone, replaced by a faint, steady luminescence. The connection, the overwhelming mental merging, had receded, leaving only a lingering echo. Physical tension gave way to a different kind of tension. Silence stretched between them, heavy and charged. He reached out a hand, hesitant, and touched her shoulder. Her skin was still hot, smooth. "Vershi," he said, his voice rough, uncertain. She flinched at the sound of her designation, a sharp, involuntary movement. The physical, primal urgency of moments ago was gone, replaced by jaw. What? Regret? Shame? He didn't know. He pushed himself up onto his elbow, looking at her. The confident warrior facade was gone, leaving her looking strangely small, vulnerable. "Hey," he said softly, "you okay?" She didn't answer. Just lay there, her back to him, the faint light of her tattoos illuminating the curve of her spine. The elder's hum had returned to its low, expectant drone. They were waiting to see the result of the rite, waiting to see if the dissonance had been claimed or if the flow had been disrupted. He looked at her again, really looked at her, remembering that fleeting moment of absolute connection, the raw truth that had resonated through him. The name, her name, he didn't know how he knew it. It hadn't been spoken aloud, hadn't been projected. It had just, been there, a core truth revealed in the merging of their very beings. He took a breath and said it, quietly, gently, the name that had echoed in the deepest part of his mind, her true name. Lyra. The effect was instantaneous. Cathar Vares. Lyra went rigid. Every muscle in her body tensed. She spun around, scrambling away from him on hands and knees, her gold eyes wide with pure, unadulterated panic. The faint luminescence of her skin flared, a frantic pulse that mirrored the sudden frantic pounding of his heart. "What did you say?" she projected, her mental voice sharp, trembling, utterly stripped of its former power. Repeat it. He stared at her, taken aback by the intensity of her reaction. This wasn't just surprise, it was terror. Lyra, he said again, keeping his voice soft, trying to project calm into the charged air. Your name, your real name, Lyra. Her hands flew to her throat, covering the now dimming humming nodes. Her breath came in short, ragged gasps, visible vapor in the hot cavern air. She looked like he'd struck her. How? She whispered, the word not a projection this time, but a raw, fragile sound from her lips, a sound he hadn't heard before. How do you know that name? He frowned, genuinely confused. I don't know how I know, it just Tadio came to me. During, don't you know? The right, when we connected. He gestured vaguely between them. It was there, in your head, I guess, or in mine. It just resonated. Her panic didn't subside. It deepened. She hugged herself, rocking slightly, her gold eyes darting around the cavern towards the watching elders, then back to him. That name? It is not known, she whispered, her voice trembling. Not outside.
Smoke outside the veiled space.
Only those of the blood resonance. They know it. It is kept. Tommy Galste de Rufero. Ibtani Obfilof. Hidden. The veiled space? The blood resonance? What the hell was she talking about? And why was her name such a big deal? Hidden? Why? What's so secret about Lyra? He asked. It's a nice name. Sounds softer than Virus. Softer. She let out a shaky alien sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. It is. Can everything. It is the root name. The name given before the flow claims you fully, before the designation is earned. She swallowed hard, her throat working. The root name is vulnerable. It holds the core vibration before it is tempered by the flow. To know a root name, do, it is to know the unprotected self. Unprotected self. Right. He'd inadvertently ripped away her shield. Not just the warrior facade, but something far more fundamental, something tied to her culture, her identity. Okay, he said slowly, picking his words carefully. So, here are the whole doll. Knowing your root name is a big deal. A secret. Got it. Why the panic? Is it going to get you in trouble with the elders? She flinched again at the mention of the elders. Their collective hum had gone silent. They were watching, their golden eyes like 1,000 tiny suns in the gloom, sensing the shift, sensing the disruption. Trouble? Lyra's voice was thin. It is. An aberration. My root name. Oh, that is bound to a lineage. A specific bought. Resonance line. A line that was, and a line that was, severed. Erased. Erased? Severed? Her past wasn't just hidden. It was apparently forbidden. Erased? What happened? He asked gently. He remembered the flashes of isolation, the loneliness he'd felt during their connection. Was that tied to this severed line? She finally looked at him directly, her eyes filled with a deep, ancient pain. There was junkie hide some, there was vows have, one thir's peeled, they should go mordian key, but you're not come hours might they toes, but hism a wav. Dissonance, within the flow, a deviation that challenged the elders. My line. We bore that dissonance. It was. That night in her eye was one fouls dulsta for nabitive oath, was one telens altain, final deeth mateway porsh of darrow, was core jackal I've galled as daker eyes the eye. Purged. Purged. A dark word. It painted a grim picture of her past, of her people. So, you survived the purge? And you're hiding who you are? My root name. Jock Portany. Jock Portany, but porting Jock Portany. My root name or Jock Portany. It was shielded, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper, bound to a specific frequency only those of that lineage could access. To prevent contamination, and to be forgotten, and he'd somehow accessed it. Through the chaos of their forced connection, the violence of the right, the unraveling of his own chaotic knot, he'd stumbled upon her deepest secret. And now I know it, he said softly. Lyra, she closed her eyes briefly, a shudder running through her. Yes. Now you know. A dissonance has merged with a root name. The harmony is broken. The flow is, "Xiao, you new here?" the Belium woman said, disrupted. The disruption felt less like a cosmic catastrophe and more like a shared secret, a vulnerable moment between two individuals who had just undergone something incredibly intense, something that had revealed far more than they'd intended. He pushed himself fully into a sitting position, ignoring the lingering aches in his body. "Okay, so we disrupted the flow," he said, trying to inject a little of his usual sarcasm back into the conversation, just to anchor himself. "What's the worst-case scenario? They throw us both into the lava? Or is there something worse than molten rock?" She opened her eyes. The panic was still there, but now mixed with a flicker of something else. Resignation? Or perhaps a dangerous kind of clarity. To know a root name is to hold a piece of that being's fundamental energy, she projected, her voice regaining a fraction of its power but still tinged with fear. It is, to know a root name. Ownership. A claim deeper than the right of binding. Ownership. He'd accidentally claimed her, not as Cathar Vrish, the dominant warrior, but as Lyra, the hidden, vulnerable survivor of a purged lineage. "You mean, I accidentally claimed you?" He couldn't help the slight smirk that touched his lips. "Figures. My luck. Always screwing things up in the most spectacular ways. Usually just involves blowing up a ship. This is dom in treatle pas, wedem in de post, and you are old pas, can de beak." "No." Her golden eyes narrowed slightly, but the panic didn't fade. "It is not." "Oh, amusement. Human jacks?" "It is. Just Compton by a vituperi dori fermen Jesu, ratikitas a white cordatum tosta ball the gut term. Consequence. For you. And for me." Lyra pushed herself up, her movements still jerky, unsettled. She stood, her luminous skin glowing faintly in the gloom. The elder's silent watch felt like a physical weight. "The rite is complete," she projected, her voice regaining its commanding tone, though a tremor still ran through it if he listened closely. "The binding."
Audit has occurred.
She didn't mention the name, not aloud, not yet. He got to his feet too, feeling the ache in his muscles, the lingering oddness of the binding. "Yeah," he said, picking up his discarded flight suit, though he doubted he'd need it in this heat. "Definitely felt like something occurred. Pretty intense. 0 stars. Would not recommend." She ignored the sarcasm, her gold eyes scanning the silent elders. They hadn't moved. They were waiting for her to interpret the result. The dissonance. Bapunkanangada docks. The dissonance. Bapunkanangada docks. 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 Bapunkanangada. "It did not yield," she stated, addressing the elders, her voice carrying across the cavern. "It resonated. Fiercely. This wasn't the expected outcome. A dissonance should be absorbed, silenced, harmonized into the flow. His resistance hadn't broken. It had integrated. Or perhaps, challenged and transformed the very nature of the integration." She turned slightly, her gaze sweeping over the silent crowd. "The binding is unstable, unforeseen, the human's core. It is not of the flow, yet it is now. Joieli jakti the kit terioi, ondera thacteri, yet a not swane mussen famigre. And a cup to megas ketchamansid, double can of lot comedies and fivit to the surmaukin, not have team ichidaman, gumble twos of apter sor forn't you. Bound to mine. Bound to Lyra, not Cathar Vres. The root name? Did the elders know the difference? Did they sense it? Or did the sheer fact of any binding with a dissonance override the nuances of lineage? The large, gravelly-voiced elder finally projected, its hum rumbling through the cavern. An unstable binding is a threat to the harmony. A dissonance cannot be permitted to taint the flow. He does not taint, Lyra countered instantly, her voice sharp. He resonates differently. A counter frequency. It creates something new. Something new. That sounded dangerous to the elders. Their hum rose slightly, a murmur of disapproval. The right serves the flow, Catharvarus, the elder projected. Not your curiosity. If the binding is unstable, the dissonance must be purged. Sever the link. Now, sever the link. Purge him. Right back to the lava pit. Hold on a damn minute, Jax cut in, stepping forward. You can't just purge me. We're bound, she said so. He looked at Lyra. Right? We're bonded. Like space married or something? She didn't answer him directly, her gaze still fixed on the elders. The binding cannot be severed without consequence, she projected, her voice firm. Our cores are intertwined. To break the link would damage the mountain's echo, perhaps silence it entirely. Silence her. Lyra. She was threatening them with her own destruction to protect him, or maybe just stating a fact of this unpredictable right. The elders hummed louder now, the sound filled with anger and uncertainty. They wanted him gone, wanted the disruption removed, but they wouldn't risk damaging Catharvarus, the mountain's echo, a figure of importance in their rigid hierarchy. The gravelly elder projected again, its tone laced with cold calculation. The dissonance remains, a threat. If the binding cannot be severed without consequence to you, Catharvarus, then the source of the dissonance must be controlled, contained, or its link to the flow weaponized. Weaponized? Containment sounded bad. Weaponizing sounded worse. Controlled? Contained? What does that mean? Jax demanded. Am I getting a cage, or am I suddenly drafted into the flow army? Lyra finally turned back to him, her golden eyes holding a grim light. It means, she projected, her voice low, for his ears only this time, they see your chaos as a force, one they cannot assimilate, but perhaps direct. And because you are bound to me, I am now responsible for that direction, for your control. She paused, then added, her voice almost a whisper, and because you know my root name. Implications are? So profound. Profound implied more trouble than just military service. Root names purged lineages. This was tangled up in something far bigger than just his accidental crash. Profound how? He asked, feeling a prickle of anxiety. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned to face the elders fully, drawing herself up to her full, imposing height. The faint light on her skin pulsed with renewed strength, not frantic this time, but steady, determined. The human Jax is claimed, she projected, her voice ringing with authority that momentarily silenced the elder's hum. The right is complete. The binding is unstable, yes, but it is mine. He is now bound to the mountain's echo. His dissonance? I vote you. Owns is under my direction. By the laws of the flow established by the ancients, a binding, once complete, cannot be challenged by those outside the resonance. She was using their own laws, their own ritual language against them, claiming him unequivocally, publicly, establishing her ownership not just over the human, but over the unpredictable energy he represented. It was a bold move, a dangerous move. The elders remained silent for a long moment, their collective hum a low thrum of consideration, perhaps frustration. Finally, the gravelly elder projected, its voice grudging. Ganin, I won, as the ancients decreed. A binding of resonance cannot be challenged by the unbound. The dissonance is claimed, Catharvarus. Since built suboldest for this deviation rests solely with you. Ensure the harmony is not irrevocably shattered. It wasn't an acceptance, it was a warning. A burden placed squarely on her shoulders, and by extension, on his. She had claimed him, bound him, and in doing so revealed a secret that linked them both to a purged past and a dangerous future. The tension in the cavern didn't break, it simply shifted. The elders dispersed slowly, their collective hum receding as they returned to their stations, their golden eyes occasionally sweeping over Lyra and Jax. The gravelly elder remained for a moment longer, its gaze lingering on them before finally turning and moving away, its hum fading into the background. They were alone again, relatively speaking, near the edge of the lava pool. The air was still thick with heat and the strange scent of the cavern. The silence between them stretched, heavy with unspoken words. Lyra stood rigid, her back to him again, her shoulders tight. He watched her, sensing the immense weight she was carrying, the weight of the elder's judgment, the responsibility for his dissonance, and the terrifying secret of her root name, now shared between them. "So," he said finally, breaking the silence, "that was not a thing. We survived the trial. We're bonded. You accidentally threatened to get yourself silenced to save my ass. And now you own me." He paused. "And I know your name." He let the last part hang in the air. "Lyra." She flinched again at the sound of it, even whispered. She turned slowly to face him. The warrior facade was back, but it was brittle now, cracked around the edges. Her golden eyes, though sharp, held a flicker of vulnerability he hadn't seen before. "You do not know it," she projected, her voice low, intense. "You accessed it. Through the unpredictable nature of the binding. It is not knowledge. It is resonance, a consequence of our forced union." "Okay, fine. Resonance. Whatever you call it, Lyra. It's stuck in my head. And it seems to freak you out more than getting purged." He stepped closer. "Why? What is it about that name that makes you panic?" She hesitated, her gaze flicking towards where the elders had been. "My lineage. The one whose root names were shielded. We were not purged from weakness," she projected, her voice barely audible over the distant hum. "We were purged from strength, a resonance so strong it could deviate the flow itself. The elders feared it. Feared us. Feared her. Feared Lyra." The name held a history of power, of defiance, of being too much for the rigid harmony of the flow. It wasn't just a secret, it was a mark, a target. "So your root name isn't just a secret identity," he said, putting the pieces together. "It's a sign you come from a line they tried to wipe out because they were too powerful. And now that power, that resonance, dips down to my chaotic frequency. A dangerous combination. For all of them." A wry smile touched his lips. "Figures. I crash land, stumble into a secret ritual, get accidentally space married to an alien warrior queen with a forbidden powerful name, and now I'm either a weapon or a liability. Just another Tuesday." Her golden eyes narrowed. "You find this amusing, human Jax? Amusing? No. Absurd? Absolutely." He shrugged. "My life's been one long string of absurdities. Might as well embrace the latest one." "Look, Lyra." He used the name again, watching her reaction. She didn't flinch as hard this time, but the tension remained etched in her features. "We're stuck with each other now. Literally. The elders aren't exactly thrilled about it, and apparently, knowing your name makes me some kind of walking security breach. We need to figure this out together." "Figure out?" She projected, the concept seemingly alien to her. "The flow dictates. The elders judge. There is nothing to figure. There's always something to figure," he countered, "especially when ancient rituals collide with smart-ass humans and forbidden root names. Your people want to contain my dissonance. You're responsible for me, my very existence here, knowing what I know. That the nappy is a threat to the harmony they crave. We're a problem, Lyra, and problems need solutions, not just acceptance of the flow." He took another step closer, closing the distance between them. He reached out and tentatively touched the faint, glowing pattern on her arm. Her skin was still warm, her humming a low thrum beneath his fingers. "We went through something in there," he said softly. "Something. Real. Beyond your rituals. Beyond my snark. I saw, tonic wild. Dostald and Oskamamodi West. I'm odd hold up all dofta code. I felt you, Lyra, not Cathar verse." Her gaze was unwavering, searching his face. The vulnerability peeked through the cracks in her warrior facade again. "You saw." The unprotected," she projected. "A weakness." "Not a weakness," he contradicted firmly. "A truth. A hell of a lot more interesting than the mountain's echo routine." He paused. "Look, I don't know what this root name thing means for you or for me, but I know we're connected now. And maybe my chaos, my dissonance, is exactly what you need to survive. To find a different path than the one the flow dictated. Because those elders, they're not done with us. Not by a long shot." He wasn't just talking about escaping the cavern anymore. He was talking about escaping the constraints of her world, her culture, her past, and maybe, just maybe, finding something new together, something forged in chaos and forbidden knowledge. The weight of the elder's judgment, though physically distant, pressed down on them. Lyra's golden eyes searched his, reading not just his words but the chaotic energy beneath them. The faint luminescence of her skin pulsed irregularly, mirroring the turmoil within her. A different path, she projected, the concept strange on her mental tongue. The flow is the path. There is no deviation that does not lead to dissolution. Maybe dissolution isn't the worst thing, Jax countered, letting his hand linger on her arm. Maybe the flow needs to dissolve a little. Make room for something unexpected, like us. He risked a small, genuine smile. It felt foreign on his face after all the sarcastic grins. Lyra looked away, her gaze fixed on the glowing lava pool. To challenge the flow. Oh, too, it is to challenge existence itself, she projected, her voice low. It is annihilation. Or transformation, he suggested. Look, Lyra, you claimed me. You used your own standing, your own history, to shield me from being purged. That wasn't just about the right. That was, to Oz. Something else. Something you chose. He squeezed her arm gently. And now you're stuck with a guy who knows your biggest secret and thinks your rigid ancient culture needs a serious shakeup. She was silent for a long moment, the only sound the distant hum of the cavern and the soft thrumming from her throat. Finally, she turned back to him. The warrior was still there, but softened by the shared vulnerability, the dangerous secret that bound them. The knowledge of my root name. It is a violation of the deepest kind, she projected, her voice firm but lacking its former cold edge. By the laws you could be.
Gun erased.
Silence permanently. And just so. I would be held accountable, but you didn't tell them, he pointed out. You didn't tell them I knew. You shielded me. Because the binding is complete, she responded, stating it as a fact. To reveal the full depth of the resonance, it would have been perceived as deliberate sabotage of the flow, not accidental deviation. The consequence would have been a mutual erasure. From the records, from existence. Mutual erasure. Right, still didn't sound great, but it confirmed she had deliberately withheld information, protected him, choosing the unpredictable outcome over the dictated one. That was a deviation in itself. So we're living on borrowed time, he said, bound together, hiding a secret that could get us both wiped out. Sounds like my kind of party. He saw a flicker of something like amusement in her golden eyes this time. A genuine reaction, not just an alien interpretation. Your parties, they sound dumb? Dangerous, she projected. They are, he agreed with a grin. But hey, at least they're not boring. Look, the elders are watching. They expect you to control my dissonance, to ensure I don't shatter the harmony. What's the plan, Lyra? Using her root name again, deliberately, testing the waters. This time, she didn't flinch. She held his gaze, a strange resolve hardening her features. The plan, she projected, her voice regaining its commanding edge but tempered with a newfound awareness, is to survive. To manage this unpredictable resonance we have created. She paused, then added, her voice lower. And to understand it, this root name, bound to a dissonance, that is an unprecedented. It speaks of possibility, of a potential, Paul. Buktanen, Woodkirkennel, Tuolmes, but potential dollar basumit ground. Deviation that the elders never anticipated, a deviation that could reshape everything. Or destroy them. Possibility, he echoed, liking the sound of it. I'm all about possibility, Lyra. So what's the first step? Convincing your people I'm just a harmless space bum? Or are we going full fugitives bound by forbidden resonance? She took a step closer, her hand reaching out to touch his chest, right over his heart. The lingering connection, the resonance of the binding flared between them. The first step, she projected, her voice deep resonant, is to ensure the elders do not discover the truth of the binding. Of the root name, we maintain the facade of controlled dissonance. We buy time. Her fingers lingered on his chest, and he felt her energy swirling around his, no longer fighting but coexisting. Two distinct frequencies bound together. And the next step? He asked softly. She looked up at him, her golden eyes holding a dangerous glint. The next step, The next step, Jangan hemzen formaldas. Del du constitute stall for the Trulak, for saying loderquace to BC, is to explore this resonance, this connection that allowed a dissonance to access a root name, to discover what power lies within it. Power, forbidden power, forged in chaos and vulnerability. Sounds like a plan, he said, his voice a little hoarse. He covered her hand with his, holding her touch against his heart. Just try not to panic too much when I call you Lyra. This time she didn't flinch. A small, almost imperceptible nod. The first flicker of acceptance. The start of their unpredictable, dangerous journey together. Bound by resonance, threatened by elders, and armed with a forbidden name and a chaotic human heart. Their presence near the lava pool, no longer engaged in the rite but simply standing together, drew a different kind of attention from the elders. Not hostile, not yet, but watchful. Lyra straightened, pulling her hand away, the deliberate distance a necessary performance. We must return to the surface, she projected, her voice back to the commanding cadence of Cathar verse. The trial is concluded, the judgment rendered. My charge must be contained. Your charge, he repeated under his breath, a small private joke. Right. Don't want the dissonance running wild. He picked up his clothes, the worn fabric feeling flimsy and useless against the heat of the cavern, against the lingering heat of her touch. As they walked towards the fissure entrance, moving away from the center of the cavern, he felt the shift in the elder's energy, a wary acceptance for now. They had accepted the binding, but the underlying unease remained. He was a deviation, a potential threat. And Lyra was responsible for him. The climb back up the fissure was easier, physically but emotionally charged. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was filled with the unspoken weight of their shared secret, their dangerous connection. Lyra moved with her usual effortless grace, leading the way, the faint light from her tattoos casting shifting patterns on the rock walls. He followed, his mind racing. A purged lineage, a hidden name, a forbidden power, and him, the accidental key. This was a galactic mess, even by his standards. They emerged onto the surface, the harsh sunlight a shock after the gloom of the cavern. The heat haze still shimmered, distorting the landscape. Lyra stopped at the fissure edge, scanning the horizon with those intense golden eyes. My vessel is secured some distance from here, she projected. It awaits. It is designed for single transport, but the binding, she trailed off, means we travel together? He finished for her. Yeah, figured. Space married, remember? For better or worse? Mostly worse, given my track record. She gave no outward reaction to his sarcasm, but he felt a ripple of something through the lingering resonance between them. Something that wasn't annoyance. He looked back at the spot where his shuttle had crashed. Just a dark scar on the red rock. Everything he'd owned, everything familiar, gone. Replaced by, doubt this, a powerful, complex alien warrior, a deadly secret, and a force bond he didn't understand. My ship's gone, he said flatly. Not exactly going anywhere without a ride. The flow provides, she projected, turning towards the direction opposite the crash site. My vessel is adequate. Adequate. Right. Probably sterile, humorless, and humming. He fell into step beside her, keeping pace with her long strides. The heat of the ground was intense through the thin soles of his boots. Her bare feet seemed unbothered. So, he started, needing to talk, to break the silent intensity. This veiled space you mentioned, where the root names are kept secret. What is it? Some kind of psychic locker room? She glanced at him, a hint of impatience in her eyes. It is not. Depositing at those knuckles, close. Physical, she projected. It is a layer of the flow, a shielded frequency only accessible through specific resonance keys. Passed through bloodlines, through root names. Resonance keys? Bloodlines? More ancient, dangerous stuff. And knowing Lyra, that's one of the keys? It is the master key, she stated, her mental voice tight. It connects directly to the source of the veiled resonance. To know it, odds eye, the ball madai, kengsigan the bleat, is to bypass all other layers. He whistled softly. Well, shit. No wonder you freaked out. I basically just waltzed into your people's deepest, darkest vault. You did not waltz, she corrected. You stumbled, tripped, fell into it during a moment of forced vulnerability. Forced vulnerability? Yeah, that sounded about right. His life story. So, he said, changing the subject slightly, This mountain's echo designation, what does that mean exactly? What do you do? I am of the inner ring, she projected, her voice regaining some of its former pride. Guardian of the sacred flows, speaker of the mountain's will, executor of the elders' judgments. Guardian, speaker, executor, important stuff, sounded lonely as hell, which aligned with the loneliness he'd felt from her during the binding. Sounds like a stressful job, he commented. Lots of heavy humming, I bet. She didn't respond directly, but he felt a subtle shift in her energy, a faint pulse of something that felt suspiciously like agreement. And now, she projected, her mental voice serious again, my role includes managing a dissonance, a human. To bound to a root name, a walking paradox. Paradox. Yeah, he was good at that. Look, he said, stopping, making her stop with him. He met her gaze, his own serious for once. I didn't ask for this, Lyra. I didn't ask to crash here, didn't ask for your crazy ritual, didn't ask to get bound or find out your secret name. But it happened, and now we're in this together. Whatever this resonance is, whatever this unstable binding means, whatever danger comes from those elders or from your past, we face it together, as partners, not captor and captive, not owner and charge. He held her gaze, waiting for her reaction. It was a gamble, challenging her mountain's echo persona, pushing for something equal, something mutual, something based on their shared secret and the bizarre, intense connection forged in the heat. She stared at him, her gold eyes unblinking. The humming nodes in her throat pulsed slowly. The air crackled between them, thick with unspoken possibility. This was the true start of their journey. Lyra remained silent for a long moment, weighing his words. The silence stretched, filled only by the oppressive heat and the faint, ever-present hum of the planet. His proposal hung in the air. Not captor and captive, not owner and charge, but partners, equals. The concept seemed revolutionary within the rigid framework of her culture, the flow that dictated every aspect of existence. She had claimed him in the right, taken responsibility for his unpredictable dissonance before the elders. But this
this was different.
a choice, a deviation she hadn't anticipated. Her golden eyes searched his, looking past the casual defiance, the sarcastic shields, to the knot of chaos and resilience she had resonated with during the binding. He had endured the rite, met her power with his own wild energy, and somehow, inexplicably, stumbled into the deepest secret of her purged lineage. He knew Lyra, not just the designation, the role, the mountain's echo, but the core, the root name, the echo of a forbidden strength. The panic she had felt earlier, the primal fear of exposure, slowly receded, replaced by a different emotion, curiosity, and something akin to inevitability. Their binding was unstable, yes, unforeseen. A deviation, but it was. Their core frequencies, though wildly different, were now intertwined. And his knowing her root name, it wasn't just a breach. It was a key, a potential unlock for the very power her lineage had been purged for possessing. Power the elders feared. Power Lyra herself didn't fully understand. Bound as she was by the flow's rigid harmony, she looked away from him, towards the distant mountain, its peaks shimmering in the heat haze. The source of the pervasive hum, the heart of the flow, her world, her prison, his arrival, his chaos, his accidental access to her deepest self. It was a disruption, a monumental one. But perhaps, not a fatal one, perhaps, but a chance. She turned back to him, her gaze steady. The warrior persona was still present, but the gold in her eyes seemed warmer now, reflecting the fierce light of the sun. Partners, she projected, the word new and strange on her mental tongue. It felt wrong, a deviation from the dictated order. Yet, looking at him, at his resilient, chaotic presence, it also felt tanishulwan fallout yuan at time. Nankinbearing hebel thoritixanga on the battle tanofsdown. Right, a necessary deviation. The elders will perceive any shift in my control, she continued, her voice low. Any sign that the dissonance is not managed. Our interactions must reflect the expected hierarchy. Until we understand. Thus, she gestured vaguely between them, acknowledging the invisible thread of their binding. Until we understand what this resonance means. And what power it holds. So we play pretend. he said, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. You're the dominant alien warrior who claimed the helpless human, and I'm your up-managed dissonance. He grinned. Got it, I can work with that. I've always been a decent actor when my life depends on it. You're acting. Must be convincing, she projected, a hint of dryness in her mental voice that surprised him. She was capable of subtle humor, even if it was layered within her commanding tone. First sign of that personality he joked about, especially when we are among others of the flow. Their resonance. Lubby is sensitive to deviations, to falsehoods. Sensitive to falsehoods. Great. His default setting was sarcasm and bluster. This was going to be challenging. Right. No jokes about being space married to a walking security breach with a cool secret name, he muttered. Lyra paused, her golden eyes fixed on his. Lyra, she projected, saying her root name herself, testing it, perhaps. You may use it when we are alone, when the resonance can be explored. Not in the presence of the flow. Alone, the word hung in the air, heavy with implication. Their alone time wouldn't just be about survival or secrets. It would be about exploring the strange, powerful connection forged between them. Exploring the dissonance and the echo, the chaotic knot, and the forbidden name. Okay, Lyra, he said softly, using the name again, watching the subtle shift in her energy. It felt less like a trespass now, more like an invitation. A dangerous one. Alone. Got it. She nodded. A small, almost imperceptible movement. Then the warrior persona clicked back into place. We must move, she projected, turning and resuming her stride across the scorching landscape. To the vessel. The time for exploration is not here. It is. Come be it out where. Elsewhere. When the eyes of the flow are not upon us. He followed her, walking side by side, the vast alien landscape stretching before them. The sun beat down, the heat relentless. But the air between them felt different now, charged not just with danger and uncertainty, but with a fragile, burgeoning partnership forged in fire and secret names. They were bound. They were dangerous, and they were just getting started. The walk to Lyra's vessel was long, the ground burning beneath his worn boots. He focused on keeping pace with her, on managing his breathing in the hot, thin air. Lyra strode ahead, her movements efficient, economical. She wasn't talking, not even projecting mentally, her focus seemingly entirely on navigating the treacherous terrain. He studied her from a few paces behind. The patterns on her skin pulsed faintly with each step. Her form was powerful, graceful, alien. And beneath it all, he knew, lay the truth of Lyra, the survivor of a purged lineage bound now to him, the human dissonance. He wondered what her ship would be like, as sterile and rigid as her culture? Or would it, like her, hold hidden depths? They crested a rise, and he saw it. Not a sleek, conventional starship, but something that looked like it had grown out of the rock itself. A large, dark, asymmetrical structure, its surface textured like cooled lava, blending seamlessly with the landscape. It hummed faintly, a low, resonant sound that was distinct from the pervasive hum of the planet, yet clearly related. This was her vessel. It looked less like a ship and more like a living part of the mountain. Impressive, he projected, genuinely. She glanced back, a flicker of something unreadable in her gold eyes. It is an extension of the flow, she projected, resonant with the core frequencies of Xylos. Xylos, the name of this damn planet. More pieces of the puzzle. As they approached the vessel, a section of the dark surface shimmered and retracted, revealing an entrance. It wasn't a door, more like an opening into darkness. The hum from within intensified, a deep, welcoming resonance. Lyra stepped towards it, then paused, looking back at him. The vessel recognizes the mountain's echo, she projected. It will permit entry for those bound to me. But your presence, Coldham, is a dissonance even here. Remain close. Do not, resonate independently. Do not resonate independently. Right, as if he could control the chaotic knot of his being. He just hoped his natural state of being a discordant mess wouldn't cause the ship to reject him. He stepped up beside her, feeling the intense heat radiating from the vessel's surface. The opening pulsed with a soft internal light. He could feel the ship's awareness, a low hum in his mind, sensing his presence, analyzing him. Lyra extended a hand, Not towards the opening, but towards him. "Take my hand," she projected. "Our combined resonance will smooth the transition." He took it. Her skin was hot, dry, the touch sparking that familiar electric connection. Her fingers closed around his, firm and secure. The humming from within the vessel intensified, blending with the subtle hum from her throat. He felt a surge of energy flow between them, a shared frequency projected towards the ship's core. The opening widened slightly, the internal light brightening. He could feel the vessel's acceptance, grudging perhaps, but undeniable. He stepped into the darkness with her, his hand clasped in hers. The opening sealed behind them with a soft, organic sound. The air inside was cool, filtered, surprisingly pleasant after the scorching heat of the surface. The internal light was soft, pervasive, emanating from the walls themselves. There were no obvious controls, no screens, no seats, just smooth, curving surfaces and the constant low hum of the vessel's life. It felt less like a ship and more like being inside a living creature. "Cozy," he muttered, projecting mentally. Lyra led him deeper into the vessel, her hand still holding his. "This is the heart of the vessel," she projected. They entered a larger chamber. In the center, the floor dipped into a concave space filled with a swirling liquid light. This was clearly the bridge, the control center. Lyra released his hand and moved towards the swirling light, stepping into the depression. The light swirled around her knees, then her waist, rising up her body like liquid fire. Her skin patterns flared, synchronizing with the vessel's internal light. She closed her eyes for a moment, her body relaxing into the light. She was merging with the ship, becoming one with it. "The vessel is ready," she projected, her voice echoing slightly in the chamber. She opened her eyes and looked at him. "Come," she projected, gesturing to the edge of the swirling light. "We depart Xylos. The elders will be assessing. Our absence is, though our absence is prudent." He hesitated for a split second. Stepping into that light felt like another act of surrender, another step deeper into her alien world, their dangerous, intertwined future. But there was no turning back now. He walked to the edge of the swirling light and stepped in. The sensation was strange, not liquid, but like being enveloped in pure energy. It was warm, comforting, and strangely resonant. It accepted him, wrapping around him like a second skin. He felt the vessel respond, a subtle vibration beneath his feet, a shift in the pervasive hum. They were moving, leaving Xylos, leaving the elders behind. For now, he looked at Lyra standing beside him in the swirling light, her form radiant, powerful, yet still holding the secret vulnerability of her root name. He was bound to her, and somehow, inexplicably, he wouldn't have it any other way. Their journey had just begun,